Kevin Cullum, welcome into Forever Forward, man.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Mike. Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I just want to kick this one off quickly with a funny story. So back in college, I used to go to the bar, and as a joke, I would tell the bartenders that the beer I just ordered was going to be my 1 millionth beer. And here you are coming up on your true 1 millionth push-up. So I just want to bring that to the surface as we start this discussion.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. Yes, I'm getting closer and closer to my 1 millionth push-up. I've been working at this since 2015. And for probably the last year or two, people have started asking more and more, well, what are you going to do after you do your millionth push-up? And I've always kind of punted that question because even as of today, I have 66,000 push-ups left to do. So that's still a lot of work, but I'm getting closer, and I'm starting to really think about, okay, well, what comes next? This has been a goal of mine for literally the last decade. And I'm 35 years old now. So it's not like I've had that many decades. So for me, this is... But anyway, I've been soliciting feedback from social media and from, anyone that is willing to share thoughts or ideas about what I should do next. And believe it or not, I have heard from probably a few dozen people, like they've left a comment saying you should drink a million beers.
You're kidding.
I love beer. I'm a big beer guy. I always have been. I don't drink anything other than beer as it relates to alcohol. And I've done the math on what it would take to drink a million beers, and it's absurd. You'd have to drink like 10 beers every day for 230 years or something like that. So it's fun to say, it's fun to think about. I've done the math, and I think it's impossible.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having done the math for me. I guess that would have probably meant that I would have had to drink like several hundred beers a day every day up until my 21st birthday, if it would have been. But look, man, I want to get ultimately to what you're going to do on your 1 millionth push-up. But I think if we could start and maybe go back, I admire your vulnerability on social media because you're using this platform, I think, to spread awareness to some really important stuff. So can you talk about maybe who you were at age 12, 13, 14, 15, and how this journey of fitness and push-ups has slowly started to shape you into the man you are today?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's that wild of a story. I am so lucky to have been born to the family that I was. I've got two great parents who are still together. They're still both alive and healthy. I'm one of four kids. I'm friends with my siblings. I'm friends with my parents. We all get along. I mean, I really could not be luckier. I grew up in a great town. At the same time, I had demons from when I was a little kid, which are not the demons that I faced. Were many would say, God, I wish that was my demon.
Yeah, I hear you.
How mild it might seem. But the reality is everybody's got demons and they manifest in different ways. They look different to everybody. Nobody really knows what somebody else is going through or what their life looks like. Like on the surface, my life has always looked incredible. In reality, compared to the vast majority of the world, it has been incredible. At the same time, I have faced struggles as well. So to your question, yeah, I mean, today I'm 35 years old. As a 12 and 13-year-old, I was debilitated by anxiety and by fears, which with the biggest fear being I had a wildly irrational fear of throwing up. And it took me until I was, God, probably into my late 20s to even be able to talk about that with other people. And now here I am, I share this on social media. I've got a post, and I don't say this to brag in any way, but I've got one post in particular, which I've pinned on my profile that has, I forget exactly, but a few million views on it. And, a ton of comments and engagement. And it's all about this irrational fear that I had growing up that I still to some extent deal with. I'm blessed with two little kids and they throw up all the time.
There's probably some exposure therapy in that. Honestly,
I mean, seriously, it has been a journey dealing with my two kids. But I went to college and I had a group of friends that were not afraid to throw up, and so I was exposed to this stuff quite a bit. But all of that to say, yeah, I try to be as open as I can about my upbringing because as a kid, I was like the best word to describe it is just debilitated by that anxiety and fear, which comes out. People may not think it because why would you be afraid of something normal like that? Normal.
Yeah, right.
Comes out in almost everything, whether it's going to school. You think, okay, well, what am I going to eat at school? What happens if I don't feel good? To a sporting activity. Well, what if this happens at this game or this practice, or you see kids running a ton and then one kid throws up. And so it's like, oh my God, the thought process, it's never ending. And I don't say that with pride because it's an embarrassing thing to share. And for decades of my life, again, I've not had that many decades. So the majority of my life, I kept all of that inside My immediate family knew, maybe my grandparents knew because my parents told them, but I told nobody aside from my immediate family because it was debilitating, but also embarrassing and not something I was ever proud of. And not that I'm proud of it today, but I've just gotten to a point in my life where I realize, and I've met enough people and spoken with enough people openly and learned that everybody struggles with something. And my fears and anxieties, I know for a fact because people leave comments on Instagram. They are stupid to so many people in the world. A lot of people have been like, "Are you kidding me, dude? People are dying in the world and this is what you're sharing." And I can understand and respect that opinion. But the reason I continue to share it is because the amount of messages that I have gotten from other people saying, "Dude, this touched me because I'm afraid of that too," or "I've struggled with this," or "I struggle with XYZ," and nobody else seems to understand it. That's why I share this stuff, because I am, still self-conscious. Who's not in some regard?
Yeah.
But I'm confident enough to know that we all battle with something.
Well, I deeply admire your vulnerability in sharing it. And look, man, everybody's got their own demons, right? I've struggled with anxiety and OCD from a young age. I've been in therapy since I was like 14 years old. I take medication every day. Now, would I want to trade places with somebody else? I don't know, because everybody's got their own things they're fighting. What I will say is it sounds like you were ashamed to admit this to people and to really talk about it, to now this has become part of your platform. Like, you're pushing this active message of vulnerability. What was it like, A, sharing that with people, and B, what made you want to start sharing it in the first place?
Yeah. So sharing it in general, sharing just my struggles has been a roller coaster, I would say.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moments where I feel like, yes. In fact, the overarching feeling that I have is, yes, I should share this, because what is the downside? The downside is people look at me and say, "Oh, you're a wuss. What a baby, what a loser," whatever. People will say things like that. That is, in my opinion, that is the downside. Or I get people that know me and think, "God, they talk behind my back. Can you believe what Kevin shared?" Or, "Can you believe this?" That is the downside. And what I have concluded is I have one life. I have two little kids that I'm trying to teach and bring up. I've got a wife that I'm trying to make feel proud of me. I've got a family that I'm trying to, have or just be a part of. And eventually we're all going to be gone. And my hope is that 2, 3, 4, 5 generations from now, people can still look back at this type of stuff, because who knows where the internet will go. I suspect these videos I post will never go away, just like anything on the internet. And my hope is that I can have a lasting impact on somebody that needs it forever. And I don't say that like I'm some special soul. I don't mean it that way, but it's amazing we all experience this from time to time. You come across something you didn't expect or anticipate, and it impacts you. And I just want to be that to somebody else out there, whether it's one person or a million. It doesn't really matter. I just want to help somebody. So the experience, to your question, I'm going on and on about this, but it's been up and down. It doesn't feel good to have people leave a rude comment or to wonder what people are thinking about me. It doesn't feel good. But the payoff is so much bigger than that. If I can go down and help people, and like that's what I can maybe be remembered for, that's worth it to me.
That's beautiful. And look, not to toot anybody's horn, but truthfully, your comment section is full of people saying, "Hey, Kevin, just a heads up. I dealt with this too." Or, "Hey, I don't deal with this specifically, but I have OCD." And so, look, if that's the mission to help one person, you're certainly already there. But what was the thing was there anything that really prompted you to want to become vulnerable? Because look, I can imagine, you live with this for your whole life. Yeah. At some point, you must be like, "Man, I need to get this off my chest." Or maybe it wasn't like that. I know for me, once I started to tell people, it actually was empowering. But I don't know if that's how it was for you.
Yes. I went to, so there's something in my town. Maybe this is a national thing or global thing. I don't know. But there's some like retreat thing that you can go on as a junior or senior in high school. I went on it. It was called Kairos.
I went on Kairos in college.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So I grew up Catholic. So this was run by a Catholic priest, and you didn't have to be Catholic to go to it, but you didn't even have to be affiliated at all with any sort of religion.
Right.
But I remember going to that in high school, and it was the first time in my life that I realized that other people struggled with things. I mean, I don't know why I didn't think that before, but I guess, when you're a kid, things are wild.
Of course.
It was the first time in my life I realized that other people struggle with stuff. And it was the first time I started sharing it about myself. And then I got in college and I started sharing it with my closest friends who, I'm not this big tough guy, but I've got some friends that are tough guys. And I remember sharing this stuff with them. And it was not the boogeyman that I once thought it would be. I mean, these tough dudes that I'm buddies with were sharing their own struggles that they were facing. And then, all this manifests. I graduate college and I started realizing who I was more and more, and realized that whether I will be successful or not, I've got the mind of an entrepreneur. I am a startup guy. That's just who I am. I want to try to do things in the world. We all do. But, I've got that entrepreneurial desire. And, the thought of maybe I can help people has always been there. And so that's when I think it's just taken time to get more comfortable with sharing it. Now, I'll talk to anybody about it. And It's not feel good to do it, but I have heard enough people say, oh, interesting, or I struggle with this, or, I've seen it open up enough people to where it's kind of like a snowball effect, kind of to what you're saying. It's like the more you share something, the more empowered you are to do it, more and more, because you realize that it resonates with so many more people than I ever would have thought.
It does. And I have to say too, so look, my podcast here, we're still small, we're growing, but even, I have a small presence on social media. The amount of people that have reached out to me that I both know and don't know, and have just said, oh, hey, I really appreciate it when you brought this up on your episode, because I don't talk about it, but I feel that way too. It's powerful, man. And it feels really good. Honestly, it feels really good.
Well, and last thing I'll say, that's, in my experience, that's how everything goes. That's how everything becomes bigger than what it is today, is just if you continue to put fuel on that fire, whatever that fire is, there's no telling what can come from it. And so I've always just had that belief that if I just keep going, whether it's with push-ups or sharing my vulnerabilities or whatever, something good will come from it.
I love that. And I'll even add one thing too. I'm not sure if you're still religious or faithful. I recently kind of refound my faith, and I only bring this up because this is the only way that I can explain this feeling. But look, I graduated from college and I've had a job for 5 years, and that all felt fine, right? But for the first time ever, this Forever Forward podcast feels like I'm moving in the way that whatever in the universe wants me to do, it feels like I'm moving with it. It feels like I have the wind at my back. And so to your point about feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, that's a feeling that you just can't grasp or experience, I feel like, unless you put yourself out there in this way. And so I'm grateful you're doing it, and I hope more people do as well.
Yes, completely agree. And I think the more that people like us share that, I think the more mostly young people, but also anybody, it might click in their own mind, and that's why I try to share all this stuff.
So I'm curious, your name on Instagram is Kevin Cullum, the push-ups guy. Where did the push-ups start, and where did fitness come into this journey of yours?
Sure. I'd actually say that the push-up stuff, so I've always dealt with this anxiety and mental stuff. That's who I was internally, but I don't think the world knew me as that. And not that the world knows me as the push-up guy now, but I share this a lot, and I do it on purpose because I think my dad deserves the credit. I used to see him doing push-ups in his room. Like, I can literally picture him as a kid. I want to say I can picture him in like his boxers doing push-ups, on his floor. And I'd come by, and whether or not I would do some, that stuck with me. And as I got older, along with my strange, irrational fears, I was just a insecure kid. So I grew up real skinny, and that bothered me. I always had trouble gaining weight. I know that like some people would say that's a blessing, but not when you're a dude. You don't want to be that skinny little
especially when like your buddies are getting real jacked and you're small. Yeah. It's like, I get it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And not even jacked. Like, I get what you mean, but like just getting bigger. And I was
larger.
Always,
yes.
Right. Like, I had a nickname on a baseball team growing up. My nickname was Beast. And that was meant to be funny because I was the antithesis of Beast. And I was fine with it because they were my friends. But like, that always was in the back of my head, like, this, I don't want to be this. And I recognized genetics played in, but also like, it got to the point when I didn't want to go to a gym for a few reasons. I didn't know my way around a gym. I still don't know my way around a gym. And I was just insecure to do it. It was embarrassing. I remember a few times in high school going to the high school gym, and, a weight bangs another weight and the whole place looks at you, and then kids are laughing. And then you're like, Jesus, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just trying. This is brutal. So I had a few of those things. It was never terrible for me, but I had a few events like that where I was like, screw this. I'm not going, I don't want to do that unless I can go by myself. And, but that didn't even happen much. So anyway, I saw my dad doing push-ups growing up. When I got into college, then I remember one time in particular, a buddy of mine, like, dude, we should do a little workout, but we were both like, I don't know what to do. And we said, let's try to do 100 push-ups in 10 minutes. And I remember both of us, I think we both did it, but it was hard. I mean, it was really hard. And that I remember was kind of like the catalyst to just doing more push-ups. I remember thinking
how old were you at that time?
At that time I was a sophomore in college. So I was probably 19, maybe 20, probably 20. And then, junior year, I started, I don't even know that I did much, but senior year, then I started doing push-ups in my own room. I did a study abroad program, which was actually in Washington, D.C., but it was called study abroad. And I started doing push-ups in the morning and at night there. I would do like 50 in the morning, 50 at night. So nothing special, but it slowly started going where I was like, I can do these anywhere. And I feel good because I can notice myself getting stronger. Whether or not the results were real, I felt like I could see some results. And from there, it was just stuck in my head. And then fast forward a few more years, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do these a lot. And then I really started, nailing them out.
So at what point did you decide to start tracking them? Because I think that's such an interesting difference. Is I think a good amount of people do push-ups, and a lot of them. You've been tracking them. And I'm curious for two things. A, when did you start? And B, how do you track them?
I graduated college in 2011.
Okay.
I worked for a couple of years out in Washington, D.C., where I met my wife. We both moved back to Chicago, where we're from. And I started working at a startup company. It ended up running out of money. But I worked at this company for like a year and a half. I remember going to a conference for that company, and I spoke to some other guy that was in my age range. And I remember him, no disrespect to this guy, but he was not at all impressive looking. He wasn't big. He wasn't strong looking. Just a normal looking guy. But I remember him saying that he had been tracking his push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that for years. And I remember him talking about how he can see the trend line of when it gets better and worse and all that. And I remember thinking, God, if he does that, why don't I do that? Like, that sounds so simple. But on top of that, it could be a cool thing to have. If I can do it for 10, 20 years, that'd be cool to look back on, to see all my activity.
Absolutely.
And that's what got me into the idea of starting to track things. And I forget then when it, I forget how long between then and when I actually did, but I started tracking my push-ups on, I could get it exactly, but something like January 20th of 2015 is when I actually started. And I've got to Google.
It's been almost 10 years of tracked push-ups.
That's right. Of push-ups, and I track other things too. So I'll track, if I go on runs, I'll track sit-ups. I track the time I wake up in the morning, how much water I drink in a day. Every year, there's always something different that I track, whether it's, I don't know, other stuff in life. We've all got things that we...
The amount of data you must have on yourself is astounding. Like, it's actually extremely useful, I can imagine, for you.
I think, it'll be interesting. At least as of now, the only useful thing for me is to look at the push-ups. Looking back at it, I put notes in there. I put things that I thought about or inspirational stuff that I came across. So I share a lot of stuff, which I enjoy. I actually read, funny enough, because this is related, but a little different. I read something on Instagram yesterday and I saved it, that somebody was talking about how it's become a practice of theirs. They've done it for the last 10 or so years in their life. It's become a practice to, I think, like every night they write like a journal entry, essentially. This is what I did today. This is what I'm grateful for. This is what I am excited about. This is the struggle I faced, or something like that. And this person's post was like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years. And even that, I thought, my God, what a simple yet powerful way to just like keep track of life. Like, how cool would it be to look, I'm 35. How cool would it be to look back when I was 24 and see, on September 11th of whatever year that was, this is what I was thinking about. Maybe it was about 9/11. Maybe it was about, my wife who wasn't my wife. I don't know, but it'd be cool to have.
And also, like, I think people underestimate, myself included, the importance of taking like 5 minutes of mindfulness just to be grateful and just to plan for the next day. I'll be the first one to say I thought that stuff wasn't real and that it didn't matter. And now that I do, I would say practice mindfulness to a small degree. I realize how important it can be. Even just taking 5 minutes and saying, hey, here's one good thing that happened today is actually so important.
Yes. Well, I feel like for so long, at least in my experience, so I don't mean this to be fact, but in my experience, that type of stuff, it has been so easy for people to roll their eyes at.
Exactly.
In the past. But like the older and older I get, the less that makes any sense to me. Or I shouldn't say that. The older I get, the more I realize that the people that roll their eyes at that type of stuff are just the people I don't want to associate with, because they will not be able to, not like I'm this special person, but they will not be able to get on the same wavelength that I am on. And I don't want to be in that negative cycle. We all know people in our lives that are just like, nothing can ever go well, or nothing is ever good enough. And like, that's exhausting. Yes. Or people that are victims and think, well, everything's, just happening terrible to me. It's like, oh my God, dude, wake up,
So, one of the things one of my goals for my life is to be able to, how do I put this? Precisely articulate how I'm feeling in any given minute. And like that, to me, this mindfulness practice is helping me to like unfog my brain. And I work with and, engage with a lot of people that I admire and respect, but also understand that their ability to communicate and not just like talk about a subject, but like really talk about themselves and where they are in their life and what they believe is just not there. And so I think if you don't do some of these things, you run the risk of like not really being able to see clearly into your own self. And that is, I could honestly argue that that's one of the most important skills a human being can and should possess.
I agree with you. And can and should possess is an interesting way to put it. I get completely what you mean. And I just put one thing on top of that, which is you're not born with this. It's a choice. Just like so many things in life, like can and should possess, and also can and should choose to possess. It sounds like, just like I do. It's like so much is out of our control in life, but so many important things are within our control. And that's what honestly push-ups have taught me. Like somebody messaged me the other day and they were like, what is the biggest lesson you've learned so far in doing these push-ups? And the guy that messaged it was like, sorry if you've answered this. And the reality is nobody's asked that. It's a great question. I haven't thought to think about it, but my answer came quick, which was I have learned that everything is within my own control. I decide how I feel. I decide what I do. I decide how I act and think about things because I'm the only one that can do it for me, just like you're the only one that can do it for you, and so on and so on. So,
and I'm sure to contrast that with maybe how helpless you felt as a kid, like you didn't know if you're going to vomit, you didn't know if you're going to see somebody throw up. Like you're like, no, I can control things, and I'm going to prove to myself that I can control this every day. And you've been doing it for many years now.
That's right. Well, and even like from a push-up standpoint, yes, it became a big control thing. I remember thinking early on, I don't want to go down in history as being remembered as the kid that was scared. I want to go down in history, and we'll see what happens, right? I want to go down in history as the guy that chose to do 1 million push-ups or whatever. Hopefully so much more than just 1 million push-ups. I remember having that victim mentality as a kid. And, my parents were awesome. They were so supportive. So it's not like I had a bad support system. But I remember thinking like, why did I have to be born with this irrational fear that I carry with me with every second of every day, everything. Yes. I remember for a while thinking that. And it wasn't until I got a little older that I was like, you know what, this is probably the biggest blessing for me that I ever could have had, because like I didn't start drinking until I got to college. Just like, a lot of kids drink in high school or whatever. And this isn't about drinking, but I remember thinking, you know what, that was probably a blessing because I don't know. What if I wasn't afraid of this? And this is getting hypothetical and maybe a little extreme, but I'm an extreme guy. What if I wasn't afraid of this stuff? What if I started drinking earlier in life? What if it got me into drugs? What if it got me into bad things? And then suddenly my life could be gone.
And it's so valid because that can happen. And often the extremes do happen, I feel like.
Right. And I'm an extreme dude, so it's anyway, things are, we can all choose to look at our situation and find the good in it if we are willing to do it, I think is my point.
Amazing, man. And what I love is that you're living it. Like you're not just saying it, you're living it, and you're so visible about it. And so for me, the second I came across you, I was like, man, I got to talk to this guy. So again, thank you for sitting down, and maybe a couple quick fun questions for you. So the first one is, I've seen not only do you do as many push-ups as you do, you've also had some unconventional endurance workouts. So I've seen like you ran 7 miles in your driveway, for example. What's the inspiration for some of those other, what I would call like funky workouts?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I just want to empower people. I want to get people like when I'm running 7 miles in my driveway, I did that because my daughter was homesick and she was taking a nap. And I was like, look, for my own mental sanity, but also I enjoy working out. I was like, I need to do something. And I forget why that day, but I chose to do a run. And I thought, you know what, maybe this could be a cool thing to do. I'll prove it to myself that I could just do this back and forth. I'm looking at my driveway right now. It's not that long. I can do this back a while. And then I'm going to make a video because maybe somebody will see it and be like, you know what? My excuse for I don't have access to a gym or I'm too busy. Maybe they'll realize that they're just telling that to themselves. So that's why I do some of these things. I recently, I ran 10 miles around a McDonald's, or I ran around a backyard. We were on vacation. And I, just ran around a backyard where my kids were hanging out, or I'll do push-ups in weird places because I would just want to prove to people that if you want to get something done, in particular, if you want to try to work on fitness or get stronger, there's nothing holding you back. Like I try to push as much as possible, even though it's not that exciting, that like you don't need a gym. You just need a floor. And every single person on earth has a floor. I don't care who you are, where you are, you have a floor, whether it's a wood floor or outdoors or a dirt floor, you've got a floor. And so I'm just trying to pump people up and impact them enough to think, my God, you know what? I'm going to take control of my life and do what I didn't think was possible for me to do.
And I love that it's so like not flashy, right? I feel like in a world of social media that's so inundated with people trying to flex, you're like the antithesis of that. You're like, this is the real work being done, right? Not this flashy cars and money and whatever. Like if you want to get better, here, I'm going to drop and give you 100 push-ups right now. Like that fires me up personally. So my last question for you is this, man. You've mentioned your kids a few times and, you know, look, I can imagine that they see you do the push-ups and, you know, this has an impact on them. I'd be curious to hear, you know, what does your family have to say about this and how supportive have they been in this process for you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I mean, this is a big one for me. You know, first of all, I have to give a shout out to my wife. She has put up with this stuff for literally a decade. And I've been an extreme dude my whole life. So she's put up with, we've been together for, God, now 13 or so years, almost more. Yeah. 13, 14 years. And yeah, I've been kind of an extreme weird guy that whole time. And so she's, you know, been okay with it, even when it's been out of her comfort zone. You know, she's a very private person. She doesn't want to be flashy or known for anything, or she just wants to live a nice life and take care of her family. And she does an incredible job. And then here I am, you know, not wanting to be flashy, but putting myself out there with hope.
Yeah, you're out there. Right.
I'm out there and I want to be out there because I want to help people. So anyway, big shout out to my wife, who I love. She's incredible. And then, you know, for my kids, they're young. My son is almost 6. My daughter's 3.5. So push-ups are a part of us. I mean, they have seen me do push-ups as their whole life. You know, my son randomly did a set of push-ups with me. And I often, when I'm doing a push-up, I'll put one of my legs over the other. Like I'll cross my ankle because people ask all the time, why do you do that? And it takes tension off like your toes. You know, because I sit in the same position. So it takes a little tension off. It's just more comfortable. And the other day, I was doing push-ups here in my dining room. My son came in and just did some too without saying a word. And he crossed his legs. And I just thought that is, you know, for me, like I thought that's pretty cool that this little guy, I didn't tell him why to do that. I didn't tell him to do it. He's never asked me. He just did it because he saw me do it. So, you know, I don't know how this will all manifest in the future. I'm sure there's some things that I post that my kids will be embarrassed by at certain ages, but I hope that by the time they're my age or hopefully younger or even older, my grandkids are around, I hope that they will be able to see the lessons that I'm trying to get out there, you know, the stuff that I have struggled with, whether it's anxiety or whatever, just the challenges I have faced. I hope they will see this and recognize what I'm trying to prove, which is anyone can do anything in life. As long as you just work hard enough for a long enough period of time, you don't quit. Eventually things will come together. That's why I tried to do 1 million push-ups. That's why I'm still trying. Because if you just like same, you mentioned your podcast is, I think to use your words, is small or new or whatever you said. It's like, yeah, but this is an important thing you're doing. And so if you just keep going, it will only continue to become more and more doors will open. That's just how life goes. But so many people, myself included at times, we quit because we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's a normal thing. But like, you know, if you just keep going, there's no telling what something can become.
And I guess I'll just close on, man. First of all, I'm in your group chat on Instagram that I think is titled Anyone Can Do Anything.
Right.
Which I absolutely love because it's so straightforward and it gets to exactly what you're saying, right? And this is not like a motivation podcast. This is not a self-help thing. But the truth of the matter is, like, if you just keep going, you will achieve whatever the heck it is that you want to do. And whether or not people believe that or not, or think that's just like some foo-foo, like, if you want it in layman's terms, just keep doing it and you will achieve it. And that's like literally, I think fundamentally your journey is like, look, I just did more and more and more and more, in this case, push-ups. But I think that it speaks to a larger theme about probably other things in your life that like you just kept going. And I admire that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for saying that. That's exactly it. I'm just trying to pump people up, whatever people are going through, just keep going. Everything's going to be all right.
Awesome, man. Well, I can't thank you again, Kevin. And look, I will continue to watch your page for inspiration for both on the fitness side and, of course, on the vulnerability side. So thanks, man.
Hey, Mike, thank you. This has been awesome. It's nice to meet you and talk to you today. Thank you.